Welcome, beautiful people, to season three. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's the third season already. Episode 8 of Jahmi Roc's Jottings, the seriously silly space for intentional musicology, sonic joy, and the kind of reggae and broader musical insight that'll keep your mind rocking and your thoughts swaying. I'm your host, Jahmi Roc, also known as Racquel Bernard. And today we are joined by two powerhouse co hosts, Nikkita, Nuclear Blackness, McPherson, and DJ Papalotl. Boop, 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 boop,
Bup.
boop. And today we will be discussing an iconic performance. None other than the Beenie Man versus Bounty Killer Verzuz that took place on May 23rd, 2020, right in the heat of the pandemic. Some say it was the greatest verses of all. Some say that it was groundbreaking and tide shifting. And today we're going to talk all about it together. So hang on to your seats, y'all, and come on this journey with us. Let's time travel a little bit. So let's kick it off, y'all.
Okay.
I want to say that first of all, I didn't see it live like my co host did. I
Mhm.
actually saw it for the first time at our rewatch party yesterday, which was so much fun. We had a party on Kingston12hifi.com and it was a blast. And I was dancing in the kitchen while making some fried chicken.
That's a song right there.
Believe you. Yes, well, take it away, Papa Lot. I know you're coming in with a point.
I'm going to state something that I don't think is common knowledge about this particular verses, and I don't know if it's true for every versus participant, whether it's Erica Badu or Babyface, but Bounty and Beanie did not get paid for this. This was an unpaid performance. And in certain circles, people had, some people were like, this is a great thing for them and the culture and the music. And for others, it was like, wow, like, what a disrespect because they should have at least gotten compensated for it. But again, I don't know if the other artists also did it unpaid or not. Like, but I want to just throw that out there just first
Mm-hmm.
thing
I mean,
because
I was like to like very recently learned that no one gets paid to do the Super Bowl performances.
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Exactly. But for most people, because I was kind of surprised that they didn't get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are expecting that artists of that level are going to be compensated because this even though it was all new technologically in terms of doing a remote concert type of performance, um, still artists of that caliber are expected to not do things like that for free. Like to hear that they would do that for free is kind of like, whoa. In terms of the Super Bowl, I think the publicity and all of that is what they get out of it, right? Like
Yeah.
they to put themselves like in a real mainstream platform to like a mainstream, because the football is like your average, you know, American families all across. But
Mm-hmm.
for the verses, I was kind of surprised, and I've known that since the gig got done. I've known that
Mm-hmm.
since jump. So epic performance, and yet they didn't get paid. I would like to look into if the other artists also didn't get paid.
Mm-hmm. I think that's I'm gonna ask the internet. I'm going to ask the internet.
Right. Right.
Oh, really? Okay, so artists generally receive compensation and other benefits for participating in verses. Hmm, interesting.
Well,
And
also to introduce catalogs of music, especially to the younger generations of people who didn't know Beenie Man's catalog, Bounty Killer's catalog, of course, the catalog of all the artists, right? And
right.
verses. And I know
Well,
that I constantly read after each verse, actually after each verses, that streaming for like Erica Badu, for Beenie Man, for Bounty, for Patti LaBelle, like streaming for all these artists did increase after their verses
right.
performances.
Right. I'm seeing
How much does that
conflicting things
really
so far. So, right, just as you said, many of the artists who have engaged in these contests have reported dramatic increases in streams after participating, as much as 300%, which can translate into revenue. Um,
right?
there seems to be, it doesn't appear that artists solely get paid for their participation, but the platform still poses a huge benefit by exposing them to hundreds of thousands of fans who tune in to watch the online battles. Okay, so I'm seeing conflicting things when I search for that. So this idea that no, they don't get paid, and then some top line ideas that they do get paid, and there seems to be uh, a dispute where Timberland and Swiss Beats sued Triller for missing payments.
Oh, wow. I
Which
think I heard something about that.
I didn't know about that at all. This is today years old learning this. How about you, Nikkita? Had you heard about this?
Nope. I just
Yeah.
knew that they sold the verses, which I was like, of course, why? It was a cultural moment, and they
Ah,
just had to make money and sold it. Um, yeah, that's all I knew up
Really?
until today.
that's disappointing.
Oh, wow. Okay, so Timbaland and Swiss Beats have settled their lawsuit against Triller over the sale of verses. The settlement will increase ownership stake. Okay. Wow. What's a
They say who bought
condition?
it?
Um, do you know? I'm gonna read what I'm seeing here on the Hollywood Reporter. So the settlement will increase the ownership stake in parent company Triller Network given to the producers as part of the original deal, according to the two sides in an announcement of the agreement. Um, so Timbaland Swiss Beats sued Triller in August of 2021, it looks like, or 2022, one of the two, claiming that the aspiring TikTok rival failed to make a $28 million payment for the acquisition of Versus. So it looks like they were selling it to uh, Triller. The rap battle show was purchased for an eight-figure sum in March 2021 in a deal that made the duo shareholders in the company. So they sold it to Triller, but they were also shareholders. Well, oh well.
So
Oh,
what is
Nikkita,
is it?
I'm feeling it.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it at all.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah. So Triller is what type of like is it media company?
Mm-hmm. It too looks like it was trying
Record
to be like a
company?
TikTok, a type of TikTok
Uh,
social media company. Yeah. But we could do a whole other deep dive just on this part alone. But what's coming to my mind though, as someone who watched it fresh, was just the nature of the verses, because I had only ever seen one other. I'm bad at the social media and current events, y'all. So the only other verses I have watched is between Mario and Omarion. So that's gonna be where I go back to in this um and I just got a little note that Triller was a uh, alternative to Instagram. So just to give you a sense of what it was. Anywho, now I had seen Omarion versus Mario, and what I find interesting is that they did in person as well. Of course, as I think Nikkita, you were telling me that this was the first in-person versus, and then they kept doing in-person after. Like it influenced
Yeah.
that. Mm-hmm. So Mario and Omarion were in person, and they did the full songs. Like I don't remember them cutting any of the songs short the way that Bounty and Beanie were doing. So these were like the show was hours long, and I also think I remember it starting really late, and I also remember there being like dancing, props, special guests, um, and all of those. So I feel like it's like they just expanded on what they saw Beenie Man and Bounty Killer doing, because you had Beenie Man's daughter coming in there and doing her dance moves and stuff like that, and then Omarion has the whole crumping crew, the whole clown crew coming through and doing their dances in a various ways. So I thought that was interesting, and one of the things that also stuck out to me was this idea of like the banter. The banter was killing me. It was so funny. And like I loved when they were saying like, oh, on stage we war, but off stage we par. Like, we're
Yeah.
not we're rivals on stage, but we're friends. Um it was so awesome. And I also was intrigued by this this badness uh type of fight. I'm a bad man too. A bunch of killers, like him have the gal tunes and all of that. But he's like, I'm a bad man too. You know. What about y'all? What are some of the things that stuck out to you?
I think that, like I said yesterday, the 1993 what was it, Sting and the verses was like two of the most iconic performances for both of them, as going back and forth, because they really honed in, right? Like they know how to do that. They've been doing it on stages for decades now, especially Beanie Man, because he's been an artist since he was literally a child, right? He
Yeah,
was already assigned to a label in Jamaica before he was even 10 years old.
yeah,
So so to watch them do what they do to me was like, oh, this is amazing. Like this is the stuff that, and I know that this gets said a lot, but what was missing in dance hall performances for a long time, because the music has changed. Dance hall has changed. And what I mean by change, I'm going to break it down like sonically in terms of the beats. The beats are not as heavy, bassy beats as they used to be. And then, of course, like the way they're bantering, there's wit, there's humor. Um, it's equally funny to like the Batman crew them, the Batman them, and then
mm,
also like it appeals to the girls, to the women, because they have countless of songs to cater to the women listeners, and they have countless of songs that just kind of really, shows off their prowess, their manliness,
Yeah.
I'm not even going to go into manhood, because if I say manhood, oh Lord, but you know how that's going to go.
We
But
might
there's
have to go
yeah,
there.
no, there's something to that. And I don't know if you know Carolyn Cooper
I do.
from Huey. Okay. And I don't know if you remember that years ago she wrote an article. I want to say like in the 90s, maybe, yeah, early 90s. She wrote an article about uh the masculinity of and the femininity of dancehall culture. Like dancehall culture has has its definitions of femininity and masculinity, and
Right.
she always likes to tie that to back to like African, West African cultures and things of that nature. So it kind of
Nice.
like reminded me of that, where uh I just thought about her, like listening to them talk about how, again, their prowess, their, how much concubine, how much girls they had. Yeah, Beenie Man had to like, it's just funny, like Beenie Man, like, yeah, I mean, the girls, them sugar, but I'm married now. Like, well, he's not married now. Remember he's like, all right, I'm married. I gotta behave myself. Yeah, bad man, but I'm married. I gotta behave myself. I ain't trying to get in trouble. And then he brings out the baby, and he's got his daughter. So here's a family man
Right.
with like gal songs and anthem gal songs and going back and forth with Bounty. So a
For
lot
sure.
of
One of the things, yeah, that you're reminding me of DJ Papalotl is that back and forth. I got another tip from somebody. Just reminding me that's the culture of the clashes, that back and forth, right? To cut songs off is a part of it, right?
right,
To that idea of that interaction with the audience is a part of it. It's all part of the culture that Jamaican sound stages and like sound clashes all about. And it's interesting that you bring up the Carolyn Cooper, because I was listening to an article. It was on something a little different. It was about female masculinity and the Beenie Man's song "Man Royal," and it was uh, kind of talking about Donna Hope's work on gender. She has a book called Man Vibes, and the author was basically I think it was Cummings or something like that. Nikkita, do you remember the name of the article writer?
For the
The female
not
masculinity
Huck
one.
Cummings. Yep.
Yeah, Cummings. Okay, I wasn't wanting to make sure I got that right. But they was talking about the man royal, so the woman who wears men's clothes and presents herself in a certain way. Um, and it was just going through Donna Hope's man vibes and talking about the gender theory, talking about Judith Butler, and Jack Halberstam, and all those like theorists of gender. And I think it comes up a lot in dancehall. Like even Donna Hope's book, Erotic Subversion, is really dope because she talks about like how there's a gal theme in dance hall where like ordinary women are exalted as very beautiful and like as they are, and they are able to gain monetarily from their positionings and from their participation in the dance hall, so that they're not demeaning themselves, but they're actually subverting these traditional roles and mores that are trying to put them in a certain box. And so it is indeed erotic subversion, not marginalization or not objectification in as it would seem to be at first glance. So yeah, some of those things came up. And Nikkita, I'm really really interested in what you're thinking about with this clash, this versus.
Yeah. I think about the fact that Jamaica doesn't often, or dancehall reggae doesn't often get its recognition in the US. in a particular way. So um I um I just remember when I was growing up in the um what we call it 2010s era, um early 2000s. There was a lot of uh artists would get featured, like Beenie Man, like Bounty Killer would
Mm-hmm.
get their features. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember while rewatching yesterday, I was like, man, I told myself I was trying to look into these songs, and I must have forgot um a few of the songs where they were collaborations
Right.
and with hip hop collaborations. And so um I just in addition to what you all are saying, I was just taking in what you all were saying. And I'm over here like, yeah, we contribute to the academic parts of things, we contribute to cultural, and people still doubted if our electrical grid can hold up, the the verses, which it did, because when I watched it live, there was not one glitch. So
Right.
um
Mm-hmm.
just
One thing,
Remember,
the
they were bringing up
go ahead,
beaches.
Nikkita.
the low expectations that people have of countries like Jamaica, which
Mm.
those low expectations are just rooted in imperialism and the ways in which um, there's a level of exploitation, right? Because I'm thinking about the way that verses happened with Bunta Killer and Beanie Man kicked off how all the other verses happened in terms of being in person. And to
Mm-hmm.
hear that there might have been conversation, or perhaps maybe we don't know. I'm just like, there should have been, period. If we were gonna
Mm-hmm.
do capitalism, if y'all gonna be on your capitalist tip, y'all should be making sure that there was something. Um, but especially if you want to sell it, if you turned around and sold it. But I'll
Mm-hmm.
digress.
One thing you said that jumps out at me, Nikkita, I was talking with Dizzle, and he mentioned that Black River had electricity before New York did. And there's a way that Jamaica, when it was colonized by the British, had been actually um, farther ahead, like having railroads and stuff like that before many spaces in the would soon to be or would later become United States. Um, so it's really interesting for you to bring up that point about the electricity because, like, yeah, I hadn't known that before that Black River had electricity before New York did. Um, so it's really interesting to see how those things play on. And I do think it is about imperialism. And one of the things that I said in an interview when I was promoting my song, Write Your Name, um, Dizzle asked me, what is something that you want people to know about Jamaica that they don't already know? And I just said, Jamaica is a great place to get your education. Like the political education that you get in Jamaica is so strong, right? And it's like I remember specifically when I went to University of the West Indies in the Institute of Caribbean Studies, I was uh, so enlightened to hear them talk about Fidel Castro in a way that they weren't talking about him in Florida. The white Cubans were vilifying him fully. And here I was in this Jamaican classroom to hear him being talked about as a revolutionary, as someone protecting Cuba and helping others. And it just kind of really turned that and shift my mind when it came to different political education. But
I
I do
agree.
digress.
I agree. The conversations in Jamaica from all walks of life. I think most Jamaicans have an interesting outlook on things, right? Because it's a small, when I say small, like everything that that happens in Jamaica, everyone is going to hear about it at some point or another, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
before internet, even before camera phones and all of that. Like I remember when I lived in Jamaica, and I'm not laughing, but it's funny, but it's not funny. There was a tourist, an American, I think she was American, and she stuck her head out the window, but because she was on the, wasn't used to the right side of the, she had to be American, she couldn't be English, but because she wasn't used to the left side of the road, she got decapitated because she stuck her head out the window. Like in the excitement of, oh, I'm in Jamaica, she stuck her head out the window, but because she was so used to the right side of the road, she stuck her head out, and in that moment, yeah, like she, it was a tragic accident, but it was something that people talked about, like, oh, be careful, don't stick your hand out the window up on the right side, because I'd be getting in the bus, or I'm looking for the bus stop or whatever, and then people would talk about it and talk about it. It had already happened before I even was in Jamaica. It probably happened like maybe within a few months before my group got there, but like when this crocodile ate this kid, like it was like big news. Everyone had an opinion. It didn't matter because I was going between, Kingston and Westmoreland. And I'm telling you, like, if you jumped in a taxi, someone would be like, yeah, air about the little boy who get eaten by the crocodile. And it was like, yeah, I know.
Jesus.
Yeah. But just saying, like, the
There's
way
a
that
way that they are attuned
dominated,
to news, right?
and then people have their viewpoints, right? And like it's that, I think it's that, it's like when when you're watching movies in a Jamaican movie theater, right? Everyone is has an emotional, very strong response to whatever the character is doing or should be doing or should not be doing. And it's kind of like the same thing about politics, about social issues, even people who are religious, like when they speak on those convictions, right? Like, uh there's a I don't want to say rhetoric, but there is a discourse. There's constant discourse in, amongst Jamaicans of all, whether you're with the uptown people or whether you're hanging out with the country people. There's always discourse. And I don't know if you know who Alcala is. Alcala, he's a grime hip hop artist from UK, and he's half Jamaican. He's English born of like German and Jamaican descent. And he always talks about how Jamaicans in education, like, it's a thing. It's a thing. Like, people enjoy discourse. Jamaicans are all about discourse. That's why Sound Clash is so much fun, because it's
Yeah.
discourse. That's why people like to listen to the cassettes, right, of Clash, because they want to hear the arguments, the speech of what was said, because they're talking about who said what at the dance last night. It gets, whenever there's a sound clash now on internet, right? People are already posting clips and of what someone said, and why pick this part, because they're not just picking the song that they're not just playing the dub plate, they're playing whatever the person is saying and then the song, right? Like, people are, I think Jamaicans love that type of engagement. And I think it's part of the call and response nature of most African cultures and music, right?
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. So speaking of call and response, I'm thinking about that segment where Beanie says, well, I'm gonna perform this next one. And Bounty is like, whether you sing it or you play it, but Beanie, it's a song, right? And then they launch into this medley on one rhythm, right? And they're just trading back and forth. And by the end of it, he's like, yeah, that was my one song.
Well,
And Bounty responds with, I think, fed up is what he responded
Yeah.
with.
but that's the wit part, right? Like, that's why I think that sound clash is so it's so like it's so I won't say like, I say pleasurable, Lord. If I watch my speech in this context. But no, but seriously, I think definitely I'll say this. When I go to the Jamrock cruise, you have your reggae fans that are into like the bands, right? Live bands, Damien, Steel Pulse, live bands, Protege, live bands, Ziggy, live bands. And then you have the the reggae dancehall fans who are all about the sound systems, who are all about the DJs, whether it's DJ Nori or Steely Bashment, like uh whether it's the sound system, Stone Love, or all the different, Mighty Crown, whatever. Like there's this the people who were never into Sound Clash on the cruise, like for them, like the experience of seeing what Sound Clash is about it was like an eye opener for them, because they didn't realize that this thing existed, because in their mind reggae is Bob Marley and the Wailers, is Bob Marley and the I3s, Taj. And it is, and it is, because they are it's the foundation and all that. But there's this whole other like global phenomena of sound clash that people really
Absolutely.
enjoy, because they love the wit, they love the jokes, they love the back and forth thing, they love draw, come on, people love to draw Kiard. Like that is what people are, like who's drawing Kiard on who? Like people look forward to
Yeah.
seriously, like people look forward to that.
Hold
Yeah.
on, for the folks at home who don't know what draw card mean, what that mean?
Oh, you want me to be the one to define it?
Yes,
Oh, she
Mhm.
said,
yes, because me never hear of it before.
well, draw Kiard, right? Is with draw a card, right? Drawing a card. It's like you're just trying to get like one up on somebody, right? But like
Ah,
verbally, lyrically, right? I mean, that's like mine,
mm,
right?
okay, cool.
And because that's basically what Sound Clash is about. It's one upping somebody, because you're trying
Right,
to, because basically the crowd votes who wins, right?
right.
So the whole, like, I've even heard this about hip hop battles. You could have the best lyrics, the best hip hop lyrics, the best written lyrics, the most conscious or the most perfect iambic pentameter, whatever, like whatever syllabication or whatever. But if you don't capture the crowd, then it's not going to matter. And it's
Mhm.
definitely the case in Sound Clash, because that's where the whole hip hop battle stuff comes from anyway.
Exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to go to, because I remember when I was in Jamaica, that was the first time that I had learned that Jamaicans influence hip hop in its origination, and that hip hop and dancehall grew up basically as cousin genres with each other. Like I knew that there was a connection between dancehall and hip hop growing up, seeing folks like Damian Marley and Nas do joint albums and stuff like that. And I thought about that collaboration, but I didn't know the history. And it took me even years later, after learning about somebody like Cool Herc and how he brought the sound system culture to that area in New York, and how this idea of hip hop sprung from there. It's little known, and there are a lot of people who contest, like, oh, you know, rap was its own thing, hip hop is another thing. Cool Herc said he didn't invent XYZ. And so there's still contestation even, but you can't deny the how present the technology of sound system culture was. And and the idea of toasting or rapping over the beat, how very influential those mechanics and those approaches were. Which I see you nodding, Nikkita. What you
Mhm.
thinking?
As I said, people don't be given credit. And more specifically, shout out to the Bronx, shout out to
Hey.
South Bronx, which is where a lot of folks were from, who came up with beatboxing and um, breakdancing and all of that. That's a part of hip
Graffiti
hop,
art, graffiti art.
graffiti art, all of that. And so um, I I was nodding because I started thinking about, during the verses, there's, just follow me real quick, is, there's currently, we're in this moment where there's an attack on people migrating. And migration is one of the most natural things that living things on this earth do. That's just what has happened, right? Period.
Right.
Before man-made borders, migration is what happened. And so I bring that up to say, because of migration, we were able to get hip hop and rap and
Exactly.
in this particular way. We were able to experience dance hall in this particular way because of migration and people's genius. We were able to be connected in this moment in 2020, where these two legendary DJs were able to uh, model how to engage in disagreement in a meaningful way. It in a way where it's not neither of them dimmed each other's light at no point.
Yeah.
And so I just also take that away from the experience that I didn't think about before. Because when I did watch, to be a little vulnerable, when I did watch this, I was like all the way in Colorado. I wasn't around my family, couldn't travel back to New York.
Oh, wow.
I hadn't been listening to a lot of dancehall and reggae because I was in a really bad situation with a partner who wouldn't let me listen to my own music. And so that day, I remember just blasting and dancing in the living room for the first time in years. And it's because those songs remind me of when my mom would take me to bashments. And so there's something very interesting where it's like there's this policing of gender in the songs, there's violence in the songs, there's all this stuff that's in the songs, yes. Right? But at the same time, it brings up this nostalgia point that was very healing for me personally. That's what I also was thinking about. And we had talked before in a previous episode of the healing nature of frequencies of music, right?
Yes.
But I'll stop there.
We have to go back to the healing part, because one of the things, right, that they say in the verses is those condolences and those words around COVID. And I feel like it is musical medicine, right? For them
Right.
to invoke that right in the middle of a pandemic and use that space, it is a part of healing, right? And it is allowing people to move through grief as well. Music allows that, right? Through the frequencies of it. I always remember Bernice Reagan Johnson. She taught me. She was a freedom singer of the civil rights movement, and she basically talks about the way that when you're feeling a certain way, how you may have been feeling in Colorado, Nikkita, when you run sound through your body, the frequencies lift you, right? So when you were moving with those frequencies, those energetic frequencies, I'm sure you were singing along too, right? Mm-hmm. Running that sound through your body, that was healing. That was healing, you know?
Yeah.
One thing that I want to go back to a little bit about the Kool Herc and the debate about who are the true founders of hip hop, right? Because there is a big, unfortunately, it's a big raging debate as opposed to acknowledging the contributions of all the different African communities in the diaspora, from Puerto Ricans, from Jamaicans, from your Southern Black Americans that migrated to the North, because a lot of scatting and all of that music is also coming from your blues and jazz.
Absolutely.
That is definitely coming from the South, right? As people migrated north, as Black Americans were migrating north, right? For decades in the 1900s, right? And one of the funny things about Kool Herc is that Kool Herc was born in Jamaica, and he immigrated as a young boy, and his father had a sound system, but his father never let him like do anything with the sound system. Like he wouldn't let him anything. And so what's interesting is, as a person who teaches um hip hop with to incarcerated youth, my job is literally to work with youth to express themselves, for hopefully for rehabilitation, for
Mm-hmm.
emotional depth, for healing, for processing, right? um that's the, like the core nature of what we do, as with my company, and we're flow instructors, like a fluent love of words, right? That's what being a flow
Mm-hmm.
instructor is. And so I always like to show documentaries on hip hop. And of course, you got to start with the Bronx, and you got to start with the 70s, and you have to start with Kool Herc, no matter what. Excuse me. And in the documentary itself, you have Grandmaster Caz, Grand Wizard Theodore. You have like the the foundation hip hop artists talking about, like, even Curtis Blow, like, about how the sound system was the big thing in the 70s, when the kids came out to the rec center or the Kool Herc parties, that it was about the sound system, right? And what
Right.
did Kool Herc do? He played those funk records, those soul records that did not get played on the radio, just like reggae
Mm-hmm.
wasn't played on the radio until
Right.
like
Right.
the early 90s, literally, in Jamaica, right? Let's keep it real.
Exactly.
Let's keep it real, right? This is why they're
Let's.
cousins. Not only because of the people, but also because of the oppression, right? Of the
Yeah.
oppression, of the hate that each genre got, and
Mm-hmm.
then and why it appealed to the young people that it did. Because whether the music, of course, the music is going to have its imperfect, you know um idiosyncrasies of life, right? Because no one is
Mm-hmm.
living perfectly. People are having relationship issues, people are having unemployment issues, people are having kids, people are being, brutalized by the police. Like, there's war, there's this, there's that. This is the 70s. Like, Vietnam was still a thing, and they're
Right.
talking about they're talking about it as it was a sound system thing. Hip hop was about having a sound system. They didn't call it sound system culture like they do in the Jamaican sense, right? In the Jamaican reggae sense. But it was the same thing. Kool Herc was playing the music of 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 the black trodden, right? Whether they were, in this case, your Puerto Rican community, your Jamaican Caribbean community, your Black American community, right? And every other, uh, community of people from the diaspora, coming from Cuba, coming from DR, right? But principally in the early 70s, we're talking about Puerto Ricans, Jamaicans, and Black Americans, right? Not exclusively, but definitely the three core groups. And what does Kool Herc do? He's playing the records. He's not playing the songs, he's playing the beats, just like they do in sound system culture. You're playing the rhythm,
Exactly.
right? You're playing. He didn't have the notion of, I'm going to play the rhythms so that someone can come in and get on the mic and DJ, DEEJAY, right? Toast, rap, whatever, on the mic. He played those records so that the kids can break dance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And what are you doing when you're singing and dancing? You're releasing, right? These
Mm-hmm.
kids are releasing. They're breakdancing. They're in crews. They're having battles. They're having lyrical battles.
Mm-hmm.
They're having dance battles, but they're not shooting each other on the street. They're not fighting there. And they didn't have
Mm-hmm.
guns, so they weren't knifing each other, right? They
Mm-hmm.
had a place to go to that wasn't the streets, right?
Mm-hmm. One thing I
So
want to just quickly interject, this is called musicking. All the things that accompany listening to music, you call it musicking. Go ahead, Butterfly.
thank you. And So when people talk about like, is hip hop like FBA, is no Jamaicans or no Caribbeans, it's like hip hop is an American music form, that it is definitely rooted in the Black American music experience, right? As well as the cultural and historical experience, but it also includes, and it wouldn't be what it is without the experiences of the other communities that were coming into New York or had been in New York. I mean, you had Puerto Ricans and Jamaicans during the Harlem Renaissance, and that was another
That part.
musical, that was another like musical period that was revolutionary, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
avant-garde. It was first of its kind, one of its kind. So I iterate that all the time when I teach. I'm always constantly pointing out like KRS-One, Pepper from Salt and Pepper, Fife, Chub Rock, Heavy D, who wrote a lot of music for so many R&B and hip hop artists, not
Mm-hmm.
Jamaican R&B and hip hop artists. Like he wrote for R&B and hip hop artists. Um, there's so many influences from, there's so many. Five from Tribe Called Quest. He's Trini, but again, a lot of a lot of influence of just Africans living in the diaspora, having
Mm-hmm.
a shared oppressive history, right? Having a
That
shared
part.
oppressive history, not just only oppressive history, but so many different cultural things, food
Right.
and music,
All of
culture.
that. And
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken, didn't they name Cool Herc in the verses?
Hmm.
Did they mention
I
Yeah.
remember. I
Beanie?
remember that.
With Beanie and Bounty, you mean?
We could. We
Yeah, Beenie
could.
and Bounty.
I'll have to rewatch it just to be sure.
Yeah,
Mhm.
man, because I feel like I heard them say it in one of the times that they were discussing like New York and hip hop and how many, because they were talking about like how many hip hop collaborations each of them have and
Yeah.
like things like that. And you know what I really like too, like how they would add, like you even were saying it during the rewatch party, Nikkita, how they give the background of the song, or if
Oh
they
yeah.
say like, oh,
I
and
love
when you
that.
did that song, I had to respond with this because
Yeah.
what was I going to do? And I remember
Yeah.
one of the responses Beenie Man said was World Dance.
Hmm.
And that
Right.
just took me back to Bogle. And it's huge, like thinking
Hmm.
about dance hall and the vocabulary of dance moves that are associated
Yeah.
with dance hall. That's a whole other podcast by itself.
Yes.
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 Yes. I remember when I used to get teased, and I learned that later on. I learned this person wasn't a friend. But they're like, Jamaicans come up with screw the light bulb, and I'm like, that sounds good to me. That sounds like a good dance move to me. I don't care what you
Right.
say.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's a
just the fact they
Bollywood
hit,
move too.
yeah, right, right. And so um I just really appreciate, it keeps you fit, keeps you
All
moving.
right. Absolutely.
Well, the reason why my name is Butterfly is because when I lived in Jamaica, I learned. I mean, that the butterfly was like the it dance, when I got there, and then I love to dance. I love music, so I was doing it, and then of course, what the Anakin butterfly, like it was like, oh Lord, like because I love to dance, but it's like everyone wants to see what the foreign girl is doing. It's like, no, don't watch it. Just let me have fun. Like everyone's on the wall. Let me have my wall too. Damn. You know. Um, but that was the thing. Like that's why my name is Butterfly, because like I remember me and a couple of girlfriends in the program, and uh two of them were Jamaican. One was born in Jamaica and then came to New York when she was about 10 or 11. And another one was like maybe second, third generation Jamaican, but she still had family in Jamaica that she would visit and stuff. And I think we were all just trying to do it. And then at some point I started doing it, and they were like, whoa, the Heineken butterfly. And I was like, okay. I mean,
I
like,
love
I
that.
got rhythm too. I got rhythm too. It's all
Big
good.
up to studying abroad. I have to say, big up to studying abroad for a number of different reasons. I think about um, my year returning home to Jamaica. I not only did I have experiences with dancehall music and taking lessons from dancehall dancers and going to the dancehall parties, but I was also exposed to soca in a way that I had not been exposed to before. It was beautiful, and to see that, and it's funny because we talk about what is given, who is given credit, and what histories are there. There was somebody, I think he was just trying to cause a stir on Facebook. He said that Calypso was from Jamaica, and somebody
Oh,
had
I
to
saw
come
that
in.
post.
You saw that poster, right? I was like,
I
stop it
saw that
now.
post. Well,
A music fan just
I
came
think
in and
what it
was like, hey.
is Harry Belafonte does like a calypso song. I don't know if he's the first person to record a calypso song that
Mm-hmm.
might have gone abroad,
Yeah.
but Harry Belafonte did do a calypso song. I just don't know if it's the first popular song beyond the Caribbean, right?
Right. And
Uh,
then for me, like Trinidad and Tobago is where Calypso is from in my
right.
book.
No,
But,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you have Jamaica has mental. So, you
Right.
know what I mean? And somewhere like Cuba would have rumba, right? And they talk to each other. These forms talk to each other, right? You have the
It's the same
rumba box in
people.
mental.
It's the same. Your Rubens were taken to Brazil. Your Rubens were taken to Cuba, even into the 1890s. And I actually lived with a fam when I my host family in Westmoreland. The grandfather who died while I lived there. By the
Oh
way,
wow.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And so basically my camera thing is tripping. So basically his grandfather was the Yoruban patriarch that came to Jamaica, because when Yorubans were brought to Jamaica, from what I understand, they came post slavery. They came post slavery, so they came to do specific type of labor, but they were not, again, this was way after slavery had already been abolished in Jamaica. So the Yoruban culture was very pronounced, because I mean, imagine if you still have populations of people coming into like almost the turn of like 19th going into the 20th century, like, and then you have all this music, right? Your Roomba, your Afro-Cuban, like, think about it, like the timeline, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it was only a few decades, later, that you start to see it and hear it in the music, with Celia
Mm-hmm.
Cruz and coming out of Cuba. And I'm saying this is all like pre-Castro time, right? So again,
Mm-hmm.
before, like, your 1940s, 50s. My mom was big into Afro-Cuban music. So
Yeah.
I grew up hearing that was what I grew up hearing when I was a child, like a lot of cumbias from Colombia and a lot of son and rumba and cha cha cha, all of that from Cuba, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was like her era of music. But again, like when you listen to a lot of Jamaican music and old school Cuban music, you can hear so many similarities. You
Yeah.
do, so many.
That's
So
why
many.
even like the conversations around like, oh, the whole lawsuit that's happening about dancehall and reggaeton is interesting, because
Mhm.
it's like they're like, this idea that they took from that one particular song, that beat
Right.
breakdown. um but it's like it's such a common breakdown that, can you really say they stole it from these particular people, right? That's one of the questions that are going around. But even if you think of the clave from out of like Cuban music, um,
Right.
there are so many other patterns that interlocked with it. And I have to credit Dizzle for this, because he'll show me the way that he interlocks these different beat patterns. So he'll
Mhm.
take a Brazilian funky pattern and lay it on top of a Cuban clave, or like have
Right.
a cumbia and put in like a R&B four on the floor backbeat, you know? And so it's so interesting how all the interlocking rhythms work in tandem
And then
together.
Caribbean peoples have always like traveled within like the within the different islands, and then also like into the Atlantic coast of Central America. So you I think that's why a lot of the music is already um so fused, like,
Yeah,
it was already a fusion before people started really coming in mass in the States, like, just because of people traveling. You know how Jamaicans, helped build the Panama Canal, and
exactly.
people coming to Costa Rica, or how just people are traveling,
Mhm.
even just between Cuba and Jamaica, and that even predates slavery, right? Like
Right.
that, like
Absolutely.
the indigenous peoples, they've been traveling amongst the islands. And even during the time of the Haitian Revolution, Jamaicans were coming into Haiti via canoes to go help fight, in the Haitian Revolution. So again, there's already a lot of connection right there. Like, I've heard Cubans tell me that Haitians came to Cuba after the Haitian Revolution to try to help them. Like, like there's this whole oral narrative
Mm,
of 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 the people's, like, trying to help each other beyond just their own island situation, right? Like,
right.
there's a whole history there. And again,
That's
you've
beautiful.
got people, yeah. There's so many Jamaicans that have like a Cuban grandfather or a
Mhm.
grandmother or parent. And
Yeah,
this
I
is
think
even
even
before,
Rita Marley is Cuban, right? Well, she's Jamaican, but she was born
Rita
in Cuba,
Marley was
right?
born in Cuba of
Right.
Jamaican parents. Right, right.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, but she was born in Cuba. All right, so I think that it's a great time for us to do, some final takeaways that we got from the verses and wrap up this episode. So I want to kick it to Nikkita and hear from you your final thoughts on this epic, epic, epic performance.
Well, if you ever need to pick me up, watch from beginning to end. And the way they handled the police,
I loved it.
just keep that in mind. At the end of the day, well, at least for me, I speak for myself, is defund the police, abolition
Mm,
forever.
mhm.
mm-hmm.
And I will say that Bunty Killer won. I'm just gonna that's what I'm just
I love it. How about you, Papa Lot?
I am always I'm always amazed at the brilliance of how Jamaican music can really appeal on so many different levels, right? Like personally, politically, culturally, even the fact that they started with all their hip hop songs and
Mhm.
collaborations, that connection right there. It just always reiterates the notion that I'm always saying to everybody, like there's a great foundation of music that Jamaica has influenced, beyond hip hop, beyond reggaeton. There's so many different genres that Jamaican music has influenced. And when people want to look down on hip hop, or want to look down on dance hall, or look down on whatever, like, to me it's like, no, like, this is the culture of the people. It's going to be raw, it's going to be direct, and it's poignant. We need music that's direct and poignant, and it's never going to be perfect. It's always going to be subjective. It's always going to have like I said, idiosyncrasies. It's never going to be the most objective, the most whatever. But I think that in a world where everything is dominated by algorithms and branding and all of that, you still have two artists that came up way before your internet and all of that. And no matter how much music they continue to do, all their catalog has that everyone gravitated to and gravitates to. All their catalog was practically all just their 90s, right? Like when you think about that era of music and the beats and how it sounded sonically and how it attracted everybody, that was a beautiful way of showing that out to the world, and
Yeah.
and also reminding the people who either like were into it and aren't into it anymore, like the way Nikkita said, like it had been so long, and then boom, like all this nostalgia, all this need to like shit broke out, man. Just say it. Nikkita broke out in the living room in Colorado. Out. Like there's something very liberating about just saying it like it is, feeling it like it is, and just getting it out your system. So yeah, the way Beanie Man handled that cop, oh, beautiful. Mwah, beautiful. And
Love it.
that's the thing about dance hall, right? Like that raw, it's raw and it's still raw, right? How it is today, it's still raw. Um but I think that's the essence of it.
Mhm.
And hopefully people will understand that it isn't just about the sex or the words or whatever. It's also about people just having their voice, and that's what Beanie and Bounty represent. They really represent the voice of all the girls, all the poor people, all like that was, I think, the most poignant thing is that they really speak to people, like to the people, to Jamaican,
Absolutely.
you know. Um I could talk about this forever, but I'm just gonna leave it right there.
Thank you, Papa Lutz. So big up to you both. Thank you both for joining me on this journey. I really hope we can continue to do this and again when you all have time. Um, I want to just highlight something I learned over there in the Institute of Caribbean Studies at UA was this idea that something like a carnival, right? It's like has this pressure cooker effect. Like you have all the toils of capitalism going on and they're building up pressure. And then something like Carnival lets out that steam. I feel like that's what this versus was all about. It was about being under lockdown, like all of the abandoned streets, the curfew, all of these things going on, right? All of this
Mhm.
pressure building up, and then all of a sudden, Beenie Man, that girl, them sugar, that release, that release. And so, big up to the Kings. Um, and big up to our listeners. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, this has been Jahmi Roc's Jottings. Keep your mind rocking and your thoughts swaying. And as always, keep jamming.